Hello and welcome to another sound booth tutorial. Today we're looking at adding lift to a chorus or a major part of the song or just any part of the song in general. What do I mean by lift? Adding lift to me means just lifting the energy in some way, adding width, adding density in terms of like maybe it means parallel compression or something like that. Let's have a listen to an example of what I'm talking about. The track is called Remedy by Nikki Rogalski. Many thanks to her for letting us have a listen to this. This track is currently being produced by myself and engineered. We're working with the scratch guitar and scratch vocal, so bear with us on that. Let's have a listen.
I know I don't need you in my life. Drugs are your remedy, and struggles are your enemy. Getting high is a therapy. It's all you ever need, and drugs are your remedy, and struggles are your enemy. Getting high is a therapy. It gives you clarity. But what about me? What about us? What about love? What happened to trust? You're all about drugs and not about commitment. Something went wrong, something went missing. What about me? What about us? What about love? What happened to trust? You're all about drugs and not about commitment. Something went wrong, something went missing.
The interesting thing, and some of you may have picked up on this, is that when I move the fader up and down between the lowest point and unity gain, there shouldn't have been much of a shift in volume. And that's because I've set this up as a gain compensated effect, more or less. There's a tiny little bit of a boost. Some of you may be familiar with my video on stereo mono monitoring or something like that. I've since obviously acquired the Zickler Protocol to my right here, and all I need to do to access mono is just press a button on that. So that's gone from my template. I'm still using the print track, and that's obviously still valuable to me. Let's have a listen to the rough actually.
Failed show doesn't mean defeat. It's not another obstacle. You're just meant to leave. When life gets hard, you don't give it up. It sucks that you taught me that hard. Took so much you forgot to give.
So I love the fact that I can have several versions of the mix on the print track. Anyway, that's the subject of another video which I've already made. In this, I've obviously modified what I had going in my template so that I can have the gain compensated for when I add in this additional processing. And how this works in a nutshell is, so you've got all the processing on the Mix-Bus, and then you're just adding more processing on top of that. But you're adding that in such a way that you're compensating for the gain. It is kind of like having an alternate version of your Mix-Bus, and you're just playing with the volume. So you might have, for one section, you have a certain version for your verses, and then you push up your choruses and it might be a bit brighter, it might be a bit wider. So I guess the easiest way to start looking into this technique is to go into how it's all routed. So the entire mix comes down to here, goes into this channel, and it's getting sent out to Mix-Plus. Mix-Plus comes down here. We've only got one plug-in on that. We'll come back to that. And then we go to the master fader. The master fader sends out to the print and stereo tracks as per my original template. We've also got this send here, which is the lift send. Now, when this is up, it's sending an exact copy of what we've got coming out of the Mix-Bus to these two tracks, the lift and the mix negative. And it's called the mix negative because it is inverted polarity, as you'll see. So the polarity is swapped on that one. And what that means is as we raise this fader, we're sending it out to our lift track, and we're also sending it to this mix negative track. All of these tracks are getting summed to the master. As you can see, master, 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 they all come down there. So as we raise that, we get level going into this track, and then we get an inverted version of the mix being fed into this. And when we reach unity, we end up with this track exactly cancelling out that track. And then all we're basically hearing is the lift track at that point, which is a really cool thing. Just to prove that point, let's take all of this off. And then we'll put a signal generator on. All right, that's enough of that. So as you would have seen, the master did not alter in volume, didn't matter where I had that. It's only until you go over 0 that you start adding in more of the negative polarity version mix. So you start to actually get an increase in levels. So don't go beyond unity on the lift send. I'll change all this back to what it was. These 3 tracks are more or less parallel. Delay compensation is not as good as it could be. I do have it switched on. If you're using more processor intensive plugins, then obviously you'd run into issues. The way I deal with that is I just copy them across, and having these bypassed means that whatever these add up to, they're going to be more or less as close as possible in polarity to this one. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, leave me a comment. So let's move into the processing itself. What I've got is the Puig Child 670. I've got it in lat vert mode. Got a little bit of a boost on this channel, which is the vert channel. All that means is mid-side. Okay, so it's essentially turning it into mid-side. Left-right is processing the left and the right differently. Linked is left and right, getting the same amount of compression. In this example, I'm not actually compressing. I've got the threshold down on both. I've turned down the center channel and I've turned up the side channel. So essentially what that does is it gives us a bit more width. The next thing is distortion. It's a stock plugin in Pro Tools, but yeah, I quite like it. I'm not using the linear quantization. I'm using the adaptive quantization. I think that means that the harder you hit it, the more it starts to distort, whereas linear it's always going to be more or less the same amount of distortion. And then lastly, we have the Puig Tech. I'm actually not doing anything with it except for dropping the gain a little bit, because as soon as you instantiate it, there's a bit of a boost. What I love about this plugin, apart from the fact that Jack Joseph Puig had something to do with it, is that it adds some nice harmonics and tone to the sound. I had the pleasure of meeting Jack in person at Mixing with the Masters over in France as one of the attendees to his seminar. He's a really lovely guy. He's a super engineer. With the Puig Child, which is also obviously one of his, I'm using it because it adds a bit of an EQ curve, and in this example, it adds a bit of width, and I like how all 3 of those are adding together. So you could theoretically use anything. I've experimented with a few different plugins, and for this particular mix, I tended to prefer this instead of, say, the I think it's the S1 imager that Waves makes. It was like the mid frequencies got boosted. I didn't like how it felt, so I didn't go in that direction. Let's have another listen.
Failure doesn't mean defeat. It's not another obstacle. You're just meant to leave. When life gets hard, you don't give it up. It sucks that you taught me that hard. Took so much you forgot to give. You're a man, but you act like a kid. It's okay, it's alright, don't reply. Now.
So you know if you're doing it properly if you're moving that fader and you're not hearing things kind of dropping out because they're phase cancelling. That's why you copy those plugins across. even with the one band, even though it's a stock plugin and it's not that processor intensive, just for the sake of knowing for sure that I've covered all bases, I've copied that across. That's the basic technique. Explore different processing. It all depends on the material that you're mixing. Have some fun with this technique. It's a nice way of being able to add things on to what you've already got happening on the Mix-Bus. So this is kind of my way of working a bit of width into the choruses and stuff like that. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. Please like, share, subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Happy mixing.